Another edition of the Kickabout here on the Blue Room. I'm your host, Rob Vera, joined today by a supersized squad, a special squad, a very, very attractive squad today. I'm very excited to welcome Matt Jones, Mark Mosey, and Hannah Farrell. Guys, this is, what are we now? 72 hours, I guess, from the kickoff of our season. And we're doing the thing that we shouldn't do, which is actually be optimistic and be excited and be happy. But I don't care. I'm just going to lean into it. This is an opportunity for us to do a big, season preview podcast. And I got to say, the events of the last couple of weeks have just made this super exciting, on a level that I can't recall. And granted, I've been suckered into optimism way too many times by Everton, as I know you all have, but I can't recall feeling quite this way, given who we have as our manager, the players that we got, etc. So I wanted to take this opportunity today to not only do just kind of a normal kickabout discussion where we go off in whatever direction we want. I wanted to add some formality to it, do a somewhat proper season preview while also throwing in some fun questions. Guys, I wanted to ask, as we get into this today, Matt, I'll start with you. Things have been busy lately. A lot of interest in these discussions because of the excitement generated by these new players coming in, especially James Rodriguez. We've got Times Square coverage now, Matt. We're big time. We're in New York, man. So how are you feeling going into all of this? I know you've been asking a lot of the questions of people, but how are you feeling as we head into the season here in the next few days?
I've got to say a little bit apprehensive now, because it's sort of good talking about new players and how they're going to fit into the team and the manager we've got and the young players we've got. And then all of a sudden you get to a Thursday and the manager does his press conference and he's talking about the players who are fit, who aren't fit, the game at the weekend. And it's all of a sudden like, these lads have actually got to go out and play a football match on Sunday, having only played 2 pre-season games. And I just hope with that in mind that they don't get beat, because it feels like if they got beat, then so much momentum and so much positivity that's been sort of garnered over the last few days and weeks even to this point would just seep out of the fan base, seep out of the football club. And maybe that's just me being a bit cynical about it, but it does just feel as though Everton are always one win away from a crisis and from the fan base. One defeat away from a crisis or from the fan base going into meltdown, even if it's the first game of the season. So I just hope that they can get a result on Sunday. And if they do, you go into that West Brom game, I think the excitement keeps up. But it's been really interesting over the last couple of weeks. We've got to say thanks to everyone who's watching us on this, who's transferred over to the YouTube stuff recently and got involved, and keep getting involved. Let us know what your thoughts on anything really in this show, and we'll read out as many as we can. But it's good to have people listening and watching and being excited about footballers like James Rodriguez. But I do worry that could all change with the flick of a switch if Harry Kane bangs one in after 5 minutes on Sunday.
Hannah, how are you feeling going into this? Obviously, Matt's talking a lot about, how all of this happiness can be quickly extinguished with one poor result in London. And let's be honest, guys, I don't think we ever expect to go. It's hard for us to have expectations of going away to Spurs or away to any match in London, really. And great things happen, but I'm trying to do 2 things at once, which is one, lean into optimism a bit, which maybe that's just a me thing, maybe that's an American thing, I don't know. And 2, at the same time, I'm trying not to put too many eggs in the basket of this one game. I think what people are genuinely excited about is sort of the big picture of these new additions and of Carlo Ancelotti getting the team from the very beginning of the season. How are you feeling going into things? And then Mark, please jump in as well.
I'm buzzing just because I think that we all have just been buzzing all week. It's been so exciting, even from seeing, like you said, Times Square and everything. It's surreal. And I've just been like fully enjoying the ride of being like one of the top trends and things in so many countries and that. So I'm still on that high. But then I've got the apprehension of Matt, but it's not it's more so because of the pressure put on by every other fan base rather than us. Like, we know that we've got this great thing now. We've got 3 unbelievable players join the squad. It's not going to be a bigger worldie on Sunday. It'd be amazing if it was, but it probably won't be at that level straight away, which I'm fine with. I'm just happy that there's been a big change and upgrades. But I think even if you look at the comments, so as when there was announcements and all that, oh, they'll still probably finish bottom of the table and all that, I just think it's like the pressure of every other fan base saying, oh, they've won the window again, nothing's going to happen, what they're going to say if there's a bad result. So that's what I'm more like, oh, because that'll be the draining thing if it's not an amazing result, rather than we'll look at the difference already, because regardless if it is an amazing game, it's still going to be an improvement. So I'm excited as a Blue getting to watch it, but then just sort of dreading if there is anything that's another fan base can pick on that they're going to, and it's just going to be really annoying. So yeah. I'm happy and not.
I understand. Yeah, Mark.
The problem of Everton in general is that only so little needs to happen for everything to seem so negative again. And it feels as though you've 3 or 4 years in the making before you can actually allow yourself to feel quite positive about it. I think that the thing that we're all highlighting at the moment is that there's a level of expectation on Everton this season, I feel. The money has been there for years, and the big names have been there now 4 years. People like Ronald Koeman, these are big names in football that we brought to the club. But it seems to have gone up a level massively, most notably, obviously, with James Rodriguez. But I think with someone like Carlo Ancelotti, and I think a few of us have said recently, in that this is not a manager who is here to progress this football club for the next decade. As much as we would all love to buy into that, he's a successful manager because he goes in, gets the job done, which is what we hope is happening now in the summer. But with that, if Everton do start badly and we do get to Christmas and we're mid-table and we're having the same sort of debates on the Blue Room or in the pub going the match or whatever it may be, this year it feels as though we are now at the stage where progress needs to happen. I think when money comes into football clubs, there's always those couple of seasons that you are finding your feet in a totally new world and a new realm, and being one of the more fortuitous clubs in the league. We've kind of been there, and we've, for the most part, wasted that experience. We haven't really learned a lot other than money is very dangerous in sport, and Everton are the epitome of that example. But it feels as though now the excuses are running out. The money which we've always held over the David Moyes era not being there, and that's our barrier to progress, that's gone. The manager, question marks over Silva, Martinez, Carlo Ancelotti. The danger of bringing him in is that where do you go if it goes wrong? And I think that's probably that's the pessimistic Evertonian within all of us. I think 19 clubs in this league go into this season thinking we're going to take this title. We probably sensibly are a little bit more reserved about what this season brings, but I think what last season showed is that you can be very, very mediocre in this league and still finish in a pretty comfortable position. The margins between what we've just done in a disappointing season and making that into a very successful one are few and far between. And I think that the people that we've brought into the club at many different levels probably give us a great opportunity to really excel this season.
It's funny because Hannah mentions, and I think there's an undercurrent in everything that the three of you have just said, and I'm sure even myself to a degree, of the expectation of our, kind of our default setting of disappointment. But I think I'm choosing to look at that as almost something that can't hurt me anymore. I don't know that. And again, I'm not trying to dare the football gods here, but I don't know that Everton can, and they've already disappointed me or hurt me more than they've already hurt me. And so I'm almost using that as sort of a shield, if you will, or a way of going into this and just saying, I'm going to lean into positivity because the plan itself is sound. The outcome may not be, but I think generally speaking, it's hard to argue with who we've appointed as manager, the way we've addressed certain positions that were just so clear to all of us that needed to be addressed. And Mark, I think you touched on something interesting in that the scary thing, I think, in some ways, is that we actually are out of excuses.
Yeah.
And what do we? I think under Moyes, I think there was probably this comfort that none of us would have admitted to, or really maybe even been conscious of, that, you know, we could just sort of enjoy whatever we could do because, you know, we know that the money barrier is there, and therefore, you know, we can't get too disappointed in whatever the results are. I think where money has been an issue, of course, is in raising expectations and reducing some of those excuses. To whereas now, and Hannah even referred to it, other fan bases really target us. They, you know, we how many times do we have to see a graphic about how much money we've spent? I said on a recent episode of the Kickabout that I don't think anyone should look at those and feel shame about it. Big clubs spend money and they have plenty of misses, but they're able to find a way through. And now it's just time for us to find a way through with these resources. Okay, guys, I want to. I put a little work into the show, which is generally pretty antithetical to my entire approach to podcasting. But I actually came up with, because I wanted this to be a true roundtable format, I came up with a series of questions that I wanted to ask, just to kind of get a sense of where everyone is at, what they're feeling, and some thoughts on some particular issues. And some of them I shared with you ahead of time, shared with the group ahead of time, just because I wanted to give these guys a chance to think about some of their answers. And others I have not, because I just I'm more interested in their kind of instantaneous answers to my weird curveball questions. So I have got my royal blue Queens of the Stone Age t-shirt on. I've got my drink ready. I'm excited to dive in. So I want to start with the first question here, and just to mix it up, Hannah, I'm going to start with you, and then I'll move on to Mark and then to Matt. Who are you most excited to see play this season? And when I ask that can mean really whatever you want it to mean. That might mean a new player that you're most excited to see. It could be a current player who you think is going to benefit the most from another year under Carlo Ancelotti or with these new players. But Hannah, who are you most excited about watching play this season?
Richarlison, which that was last season, but this is also because think what that lad put into every single game last season with what was around him. Like, he really did put everything into it and put up with an awful lot of half-assed players, basically, who were just cruising through, and he was always the one trying, even to the point where it came out this week that he contacted Alan and Takori, convincing them to come and join us because he wants it to work that much and he wants to have a success at Everton. Like, he scared us all at the end of the season, didn't he, saying like if there wasn't a change within a year, he wouldn't be sticking around with us, basically. So he scared us all. So I just think that he's had so much pride playing for us. Now that he's actually going to have a bit of quality around him, like, what's that lad going to be able to do? Because he's the person that we've all spoke about last season for shining through, basically being the diamonds in the rough. So now that he's going to have that around him, I'm so excited to see like that level of him go up, having players who match his ability, match his passion. So I just think it's going to be the making of him this season, his developments under Ancelotti, having senior players around him who've been there, who have been around the block, won all the titles that a player of his ability should go on to do in his career. I just think his like development's going to be insane this year, and he's going to go up a notch. So, and I'd be so happy to see that, because seeing his frustration when there was chances missed in that last season, or seeing his frustration when he weren't getting balls fed through to him, where you can see that he was going insane about the players behind him. Like, I'd be so happy for the lads if he has the season and he gets spoke about by people from other clubs, by other pundits, the way he deserves to be spoke about.
Yeah, I probably echo all of that, apart from I don't want any other clubs talking about him. I think we all know is kind of on the horizon with Richarlison. But yeah, a great point in that I think he is, you like to think that the ceiling is still a bit of a way off for him because of how poor the side around him has been. I mean, not only is he consistently the standout player for this team, but as Hannah said, he's done more positive recruitment work in 3 days than our previous director of football did in 3 years. So there's no end to the lad's talent. I think if I was going to single out one of the new players and generally speaking, excitement, those players are where it lies, because we didn't see a great deal of excitement from our current roster from lockdown onwards. But I would probably say Alan out of the three. He is not only someone who epitomises everything that I think Evertonians hold dear about Everton. It's that the bite, the grit, winning 50-50 tackles and describing them as goals. I mean, we all know the type of player that gets Everton fans on the edge of their seat, and it is him. But he also epitomises the absolute need that Everton have in this squad at the moment. And that's not just casually central midfield, which is something that we've highlighted for so long, but I think it's the nature of the central midfielder that he is. As much as the stats go against this from last season, there is now, I would say, no real shortage of creativity in this side, or there really shouldn't be. But what we lack is that edge in midfield, that ability to break up attacks and not be walked through like we saw our midfield consistently done last season. And as much as someone like James comes in and the narrative is that Ancelotti will build a side around him, I don't think he can even talk about building a side around one particular attacking player before you've sorted out someone like Alan in midfield. I think he's going to be instrumental. He excites me mainly because as much as people like James and Decore have potentially got something to prove in this league for varying reasons, whilst Alan also has that, he is undoubtedly, you would say, for ability and age reasons, at the peak of his game. We're not getting someone in who we're going to develop for 3 or 4 years and hopefully turn into the player that we need. And as much as we need to afford him a little bit of time in a new country, in a new league, generally speaking, from a sporting point of view, we are expecting him to come in and pretty much be the business from day one. And I know that's a lot of pressure on him, but as we've already said, going into this season, pressure is something that Everton in general are going to have to take on their shoulders. And from the glimpses that we've seen of him in a Napoli shirt, he looks as though someone who can take on that responsibility.
I've got to say, the fact that Mark Mosey's picked a defensive midfielder as the player he's most excited to watch next season says a lot about the man himself, I think.
You've seen it defend for the last few years.
do a little doggy runs up and down the line, making tackles, putting the ball off for a throw in. Yes, can't wait to see all that.
If I see him in shin pads, I swear I'm never going the game again.
I mean, the right answer here, Rob, is surely James. It's, you know,
probably my answer too, honestly, just because I can't believe he's playing for us.
I mean, I've just got the image of when he plays on Sunday, Hannah and Mose just sitting there, just shrugging the shoulders like, it's only Rodriguez. We're not asked about not asked about him. Can't even believe he's in the team.
He won't be.
But I think that the thing that I had to think about this question, and then I sort of realised it was obvious, because all week I've done nothing but try and find videos of that lad's goals on Twitter. And I've shared some of them on the Blue Room account and some of them on my own account. And some of the things you can do with a football are it's insane. It is absolutely insane. And you know, I'm sure some detractors are sort of look at it and say, well, he's just, you know, a bit of an M&S. You won't get this reference, Rob, but an M&S Gylfi Sigurdsson in that regard. But he's someone who's played at the highest level and excelled at the highest level, you know, under Ancelotti previously. He's not had a fair crack of the whip, really, on, you know, under Zidane. And when he has played for Madrid, he's had glimpses of it. But that fella can do things with the ball at his feet that probably since Everton had a 16 to 18-year-old Wayne Rooney on the books, or Andrei Kanchelskis, that we haven't had a player that's been capable of doing that since. He is a genuine creative force who can get crosses in. He can play pinpoint passes between the lines. He can control the game when it requires as well. He's somebody who can be the hub of our team from an attacking point of view. And I don't really think we've had anyone like that for a long, long time. And as much as, in all seriousness, I take the point that Moses is making, and I agree with Hannah that, you know, Richarlison does feel to me as though he's on the brink of a season where he could just go bananas and score 20 goals in the Premier League or 25 in all competitions. It feels, sitting here right now, if there's one player I'd like to see on the team sheet on Sunday, regardless of fitness and all that sort of thing and being sensible, it's got to be Rodriguez.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to it's hard for me to disagree with that. I think I keep coming back to this idea that when we talk more conventional terms about creative players, we're talking about those who can generate chances and play the game well. But when we're talking about someone like James Rodriguez, that he's the type of player that you have in mind when you use the expression "the beautiful game." There is a flair and a style that he brings, and I don't mean this in just an aesthetic, showy way, but I mean this in a fully realized version of what we all imagine this game could be. I mean, that's what he is capable of. Obviously, fitness is going to play a big part in this, but he's not at the age where that should have declined too much. I mean, I think Matt has talked about this too. When you've got players who are really technically gifted, even when they may lose a step here or there in terms of their pace, they still have that brain and that foot and that ability to kind of see the game like a chessboard. And I'm just so excited to have him play for us, and to be in a position where he can really potentially elevate our fortunes, but also just in general make the game fun to watch, which is certainly something with Everton that we haven't had nearly enough of over the years. Yes, Matt.
I just have some comments on YouTube on this, Rob. Some say, Paul Hubert saying Decore. Jubinho said getting Rodriguez and probably Alan as well. I reckon secures at least a couple more seasons for Richarlison. Obviously, reference to Harris saying Decore is only worth 5.5 in fantasy football, apparently, as well. Could be a bit of a bargain. Jubinho said agree about Alan, definitely the most exciting. Tom Challoner, Alan, the most important sign so far. I mean, you guys agree with Mark Moses. You need to have a word to yourselves. Come on. Sophia said most excited to see how good James can make our attackers look. And just another one on Jubinho from Alan. Alan is quite creative as well. That's the thing. Have you seen those direct passes he plays when it bounces openly for the opposition defenders to deal with? It's quality. So, according to our YouTube viewers, Rob, Mark Mosey's got the right answer there.
Yeah, well, Mark is the greatest among us. I understand that. No, I will say something on the Allen point that I like, because as much as I think Mark makes a great point about having someone who adds some real edge into midfield that we've been sorely missing since Gay left, but even beyond what Gay could provide in terms of winning the ball. One thing that we have desperately needed is some just general assertiveness in midfield. Guys who didn't get the ball or hide from the ball, and then when they got it, just kind of hesitate. I mean, Alan is a guy who, by all accounts, based on what I've read about him, based on what I've seen, he's a guy who is decisive. He is aggressive. He wants to get forward. I think that just from a pure personality standpoint, a pure personality transplant standpoint, that the additions in midfield, especially when you can throw Decore into the mix, it just feels like a completely different attitude in midfield that we desperately needed an upgrade for. So I'm very excited from that standpoint. Next question, Mark, I'll actually start with you on this one. Which player is going to, and I think it's a good segue because we were talking about James and the way he could potentially, the effect he will have on everyone else. But I think all these players will potentially elevate the games of others. But in that vein, which player is going to surprise us the most this season? Mark, I'll start with you.
I don't know if surprise is the right word, but it's very much on the same theme as we've had with Richarlison being elevated by these players coming in. And I think the player who could also benefit from these additions, and albeit they are in positions which directly compete with him, is Andre Gomes. He's someone who, I say surprise is the wrong word, because we have already seen how good this lad can be. I think that the main surprise was how bad he could be as well at the end of last season. Yeah. And I think if there was anything that we learned from those last 10 or 11 games, is that he absolutely relies on someone to give him a little bit of freedom about the pitch. And of course, Idrissa Gueye did that so capably at the start of Gomez's Everton career. But I think with people like Alan and in particular, potentially Decore, who can just do that little bit of everything, it just allows Andre Gomes to be the ball player in midfield. And I think we've often spoke in particular about our central midfielders and probably Tom Davies more so in the what are you as a midfielder? And I think you could very easily point that same finger at Andre Gomes. He's probably not your advanced midfield player and going to consistently link up in attacks. He's absolutely not that. He is a ball player in front of the back four, but he's not someone who's going to break up play and do the job that we expect Alan to do. He is the third central midfielder, and we need him to have that ability to not necessarily carry all of the responsibility of that midfield, which he obviously has had to do in the last sort of third of the season. But he is the one that I think will aim to recapture a little bit of that early Everton career form. And in particular, Alan and Decore are going to be the ones to do that. The challenge, obviously, and I'm sure the formation debate will echo in eternity, in particular this season, but how do we fit people like Alan, Decore, Andre Gomes, James Rodriguez? If we are to go with the 4-3-3, I think that's probably the most capable central midfield that we could put out. But it will take a little bit of adjusting for each individual player, obviously, but also that three to gel as a unit. But he is in particular the one who can himself be most excited about what has happened at Everton this summer.
Yeah, Mark, I think that's been my shout, I think, for the last couple of weeks in pondering this question. And we've touched on it a little bit in previous episodes, but I'm with you. And I think there's a sense with Andre Gomes that there's never really been a question about the talent that is in there, but it's been his ability to consistently display it. And whether or not, and I think there've been open questions about whether or not he has had the cast around him to be able to do that. I mean, we talk all the time about players at Everton. There are very few that are going to be good no matter who you put around them. Most of them seem to require some, the right partnerships. And anytime you're playing a sport with 11 per side, I think that there's always going to be that to a degree. But Andre Gomes, when he's in a position to have some of that pressure taken off of him, when he is in a position to be the third best midfielder, or third most important central midfielder, if you will, maybe that it takes that pressure off of him and allows him to finally be more consistent in showing the player that I think a lot of us suspect that he can be. Hannah, I'm going to come to you next. Player that's going to surprise us this season.
I hate to be boring and just follow the trends, but I just agree with absolutely everything Mark said, because everything he says is exactly spot on. But for me, it was also because we put a lot of pressure on the fact that we were missing him, and it was like, okay, well, once Gomes comes back, then surely this midfield problem will get a little bit better. But then obviously the situation he came back in, okay, that first game, we were like, oh, he looks what the fittest player on the pitch, blah. Okay, that quickly declined. But then I think that also quickly declined because he got rushed in, which we can all agree, it was a very speedy comeback, to then having to train at home, have everything disrupted, go into the lockdown and not be getting the rehab and intensity that he was getting. So I think then that obviously impacted him when coming back. So, and then because everyone then went very harsh at him, saying that, he lost everything basically in that space of time, I think that had a big impact too. So I think bringing in players around him, which are then going to bring the best out of him, that he also has to compete against to make sure that he is remembered in that side, that he's not just going to be cast to the side now. Because I've seen a lot of people saying things this week like, oh, well, then that shows like Gomez's place in Everton. And I don't think that's right at all. I think that's quite a wrong thing to say. And obviously you need a bit of healthy competitions amongst players to want to be contending. Obviously he's a player that we were all very excited to bring to the club. He was somebody who we had, okay, albeit not the buzz that we've had this week, but we still had that buzz around bringing in. So he shouldn't just be cast to the side. We should be like, well, he can be complimented around these players now. So I think he will. I think it's gonna kick it up a notch, but then also now he's had time to hopefully fully recover now and not the stress that he was under to recover in the circumstances. So hopefully I think that'll make for an interesting season for him.
Yeah, it's funny. It's very much, Mark, like what you said about Everton. Andre Gomes is really there are no excuses now if he is back fully fit, and he has players around him that ought to enable him to show the best of himself. And because I don't really personally think there's a question about Andre's character as a player. I just think that he is one of those players who has certain qualities, but his capabilities are not such that he's just going to be awesome, with Tom Davis next to him or any replacement level player. I think he needs certain types of players around him, and ultimately I think it'll be interesting once Gabaman, knock on wood, Gabaman is back in contention. That will be an interesting. It'd be interesting if we're playing a 4-3-3. You'd think that Alan Decore and Gabaman would probably be the first three, but as Hannah said, that healthy competition ought to make these players better. Matt, who is going to surprise us this season?
If I'd gone first, I would have also said Gomes, but I'm going to try and think of a different answer. Nice. And I've sort of gone when the guys were talking there, I was trying to think of like one which you could make a case for, and Jordan Pickford went through my head, and I sort of thought, well, I'll just be kidding myself a little bit there, because I don't really believe that's the case. Iwobi, maybe you could play him in a midfield three. In that sense, you can maybe alternate him with people who listen to the podcast. Mark Mosey just grimaced when I said that. Yerry Mina, and he can stay fit, perhaps, but again, not totally convinced. So the one I'd probably say is Luca Dean, because I think his end to the previous season, post lockdown, probably went a bit under the radar, given the issues at the club. In midfield, given the way the front two were playing, and I think he had a bit of I think at the start of the season, I think there's a few things up in the air with him. I think there's talk about him not being particularly happy. Obviously, his good mate Idrissa Gueye was moved on as well. I think we probably underestimate how difficult that could be for somebody having just spent a year at the football club, and he didn't really look focused, didn't really look completely fit, and he came back and was really good, wasn't he, in those 10 games or whatever it was after lockdown. And I just think with, another player brought in Decore, obviously they've already been doing their Instagram japes, haven't they, and stuff, having a bit of a mess around with each other. Sometimes to get himself focused, sometimes to get reacclimatised, and hopefully a regular partner on that left-hand side. Like everyone sort of said, I think we'll see a lot more of 4-3-3 this season. And if Richarlison plays out there, sort of on the left of a front three or midfield five, whatever you want to call it, he needs to have that stability. I think having legs in midfield will help him as well and give him a bit more license to get forward and overlap, which he wasn't able to do when we had a midfield full of slugs at times last season. You had to be a little bit more, cautious in the way you went about it. So I think someone like him could really kick on. Everton looked to me like they're going to be a lot more of a stable side this year. And I think that's where the creative lads in the team will flourish. And while we've all spoken about Rodriguez being, potentially fantastic, and Richarlison and scoring loads of goals, and Dom scoring goals, and Andre Gomes being revitalised, I think it's overlooked how much of a creative force Luca Dean can be for this team when he's at his best. So while my real answer was Gomes, I think second player I think could surprise us all is Luca Dean. I think he's going to get back to those levels that we saw in his first season at the club.
I think it's a really interesting shout. The with Luca Dean especially, I think I came into this season before all of these moves and thought, well, I think we'll get a good season out of Dean because he's going to be trying to get his kind of big move. I mean, if he's going to get it, this, given his age, this would be about the time to do it. If he is committed to the club and these moves have happened the way that they have, maybe he now he's more excited, as I imagine all the players are, about the potential ceiling of this season compared to others in the past. So no, definitely a good shout. I'd also throw in a random curveball for Moise Keane. I'm a believer in his talent. He obviously needs to show more, but that's pretty common, I think, with super young players in their first year. I think the talent is there, but as we've seen with injuries and other things, I mean, I think that you never know when he's going to get his opportunities, and he's going to have to be ready. I think the potential's there, but we'll see what his actual level of ambition is. We've got
some comments as well. Like I said, keep your answers coming into these questions, and we'll read them out. Live Avid agree on Gomes, and I would say Calvert-Lewin will get better with new additions as well. Carlos has said, James will surprise everyone the most. His quality's never dropped. He had an unfortunate run the last few seasons with a coach that never gave him a chance and barely had any game time. His numbers don't lie. Even when he played in Bayern after Ancelotti left, he received best Bundesliga player and did wonders with the ball. If the trust and continuity is given, he will shock us all. Adam Steele has said, Mina, he's only going to flourish with the increased South American contingent. Live has said, Gomes could be like Sheedy. The best will show in a better midfield, allowing him to express himself with workhorses around him. And Bradley Rattler has said, Pickford, he will care again.
Pickford will care again. Well, gosh, if there's a magic formula for getting Pickford to care, hopefully someone at the club knows it. All right, sale. Guys. I what was that?
So hopefully they put it on sale in the club shop.
All right. I ended with Moise Kean, and I did that was I didn't mean for this to be a transition, but I think this is actually a pretty good one. Last season, after Moise Kean arrived, at some point, and I can't remember exactly when, Everton Twitter and most of my group chats kind of erupted when he was caught on camera using the word lad. And for whatever reason, that using that word or using really any Scoutisms really seemed to get the fan base going. So, Hannah, I'm going to start with you. Of these new players, Alan, James, and Doucouré, which one is the first one that will use the word lad in an interview or a social media post?
Oh, I don't know. I'd love to think James, just because it would be the best thing ever, wouldn't it? Like, even that up the toffees thing was just the best thing ever. Like,
oh my God, Hannah, that's my new pinned tweet. That's my new religion, by the way. Like, there was something about the look in his eyes when he said it. I was just like,
yeah, like
I am ready to go climb that mountain right now.
You found yourself like that at the screen with him, like, yeah. And then I had to like think about, like, I can't believe I've just heard them words come out your mouth. Like,
pat on the badge.
Like that, you're riled up in the room. No,
like,
was
like a code phrase under duress. Okay, up the toffees.
No, but imagine him then if he went all Scouts, it'd just be amazing. Be amazing. It's like what we felt like when Ancelotti was like talking about like the strands and all that, and how much he loves Crosby. Like how we felt that he loved everything about Liverpool. Imagine if Hammer started being like that. Just be boss. So yeah, that would just make my life if he did.
Hey, I'm informed quite a bit by Roberto Martinez's stay at Everton. A guy from Spain who had been in England before that, obviously, but it's amazing how if you're on Merseyside long enough, you start to. It's amazing how that begins to seep into you, certain words, and I can see. James will probably be interviewed extensively, and it appears he will be trying to learn more English. I imagine he probably knows a little bit, but no, that would be fascinating. Mark and Matt, do you guys have any different answers than that, or what are you thinking?
I can't see any of them coming out with lad, but I'm going to make a big push for Doucouré to do all of the advertising for Goodison Supper Bar, and Alan to make the brick is local. And other than that, I can't really see James getting involved. I'm hoping he's going to just kind of concentrate on the English and maybe come at us with the lads next year.
Yeah.
It will definitely be Rodriguez, won't it? They'll get it. What I want to see is a feature where Alan and Rodriguez are being taught English by Richarlison and Scouse by John Joe Kenny. That is going to happen.
Yes.
Richarlison's going to be teaching them how to do English because he's been teaching all of us, hasn't he? Let's be honest.
Yeah.
And for John Joe and maybe Tom Davis to give them a bit of a rundown of Scousisms, if you will. As much as I hate that sort of content, to be honest, but I think Richarlison doing English lessons with those two, that has got to happen, hasn't it?
Hey, if anyone is watching this who works at the club right now, speaking of that in terms of content, and we live in a content is king world, but big props to Everton. I spoke, Matt and I had a conversation last week before James was announced, and I talked about the cultural impact of not only James coming, but the influx of more Latin American players, and how it touched me personally to begin to see more of that at the football club I love, that is obviously rooted so much in the northwest of England. But and I had said, hey, Everton need to have a Spanish account. They need to at some point aspire to be doing match commentary in Spanish and listening. And boy, they seem to, as much as we were kind of irked at the delays, which that's just part of being an Everton supporter, is delay announcements, of course, but they really seem to have their marketing launch for James ready. I thought the animated, semi-animated video announcement, the Spanish language Twitter account, which already has over 10,000 followers, and I expect that to be more than doubled in the next few days. It's fantastic, and this is one of those transcendent figures in world football, but especially in this part of the world. And I'm excited to see Everton trying to leverage it. I'm sure there's more to come, but I'm sure there will be ways in which they can do, to Matt's point, even though they may make some of us cringe, some of those kind of tie-ins to the Scouts roots of Everton, combined with the Spanish and Portuguese and other languages that are suddenly being brought into the club at such high volume. All right, guys.
Just very quickly, Rob, we've had a comment from Ronaldo Vicini. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. He said, "Hello from Colombia. Happy to hear from you guys. So interested to hear your opinions. I just wished you were a little bit more optimistic. I understand, really, but I've got to say, on the excitement scale from 0 to 10, this is probably yours on about an 8 or 9, isn't it? I think it's probably fair to say as well."
Yeah, look, and what's his name, Matt?
Ronaldo.
Oh, well, great name, first of all. I want to say, you have to understand, it's hard for us to flip that switch very quickly as a fan base. It's going to take a little time, but I will tell you, I think this is the most excited and optimistic I've seen this group be in a long time. I am personally, like I said, leaning into optimism because it's, again, there's no sport where health and fitness aren't a factor. Yes, if your best players get injured, then you're going to suffer. That's true no matter what. But I'm actually really optimistic if James can be the player that we believe he can be. And I've even said, even if he's 90% of the player he has been at his peak, that is such a vast improvement over what we've had at Everton. And really that's where we've struggled the most. So we're going to work on it. We're going to work on being I'm trying to lead that charge, but
one thing I will say, seeing that little training video the other day and seeing 20 seconds of that ability was more excited than I was post-lockdown. Point of the season, that was literally better than last 10 games or whatever. So I'm already getting to that pushing to actually buzzing.
Hannah's nailed it, guys. I have been eagerly awaiting the long form new Everton unseen video with all the I've never been more excited to just watch training with these guys in it than I ever have been before. All right, continuing on, this time a pretty serious question, and Mark, I'll start with you. In a world where every Everton player is single, which player would do the best on a trashy reality dating show like a Love Island?
So easy.
I think I know. Yeah.
Oh, if Hannah's eager to go, I'll start with you, Hannah, and give these two guys some time to think.
Yeah.
Pickford, because he's the most arrogant person in the world. He's bounced into that villa thinking that he was that he was the most gorgeous fella in there. That's what he would do. Of course he would.
Would that make him successful, though? Wasn't that the question, Rob? Who would do the best?
Who would do the best? And Hannah's making a good argument that irrational, unmerited confidence on these shows does go a long way.
Of course it does. Yeah. They all have a big ego. They wouldn't go on them shows otherwise. Pickford, for some reason, thinks that he deserves this arrogance. So maybe it is natural habitat, I think, in a place like that.
He wouldn't put his top on for the whole 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Every time it came on screen, he'd be in the pool. every single time.
And he'd be like Burns and all that as well. We'll still think he looked sick and that. Yeah, 100% Pickford.
I was going to say, if he was at the top of the entire time, his skin complexion, he'd be one of those people you see on a holiday in the swimming pool with a t-shirt on, because they got too burned the day before. But I think that arrogance he takes you so far. You probably get into like the last 3, or maybe the last 2, but not all the way. Whereas someone like Dominic Calvert-Lewin, for example, has got the looks, the style, and the personality to go all the way in something like this. Let's be honest.
I think confidence and bravado are all very nice, but ultimately class will prevail. So I would have to go straight back.
Do you watch these shows often?
No,
because I can't see any class in the finals.
Andre Gomes would be on this show and he wouldn't say a word for the absolute entirety. He'd just sit there with perfect hair and a smouldering glance at everyone who went past, and he'd walk the thing with ease.
I mean, my heart was aflutter just then, just thinking about that scenario. I
feel like you've watched different shows to me, because like I just don't know what clash you've ever seen like a Love Island final. Just gonna put it out there.
I'd be honest, I've never watched it ever.
See, as somebody who unfortunately dipped into it last year and ends up hooked for some reason, Pickford is the person you'd see there.
So Rob may as well have asked who's the biggest bell end in the squad.
Yeah. And I'll answer that with confidence, yes.
Dude, you know who I might give a fighting chance, and I use Love Island as one example, but there's a lot of these sort of reality dating shows or whatever, but I'd give Yerry Mina a chance. And I don't know if you guys saw, he had an Instagram post up not that long ago. He's happily married, but man, he had this like, it was kind of this bizarre, like it looked like the beginning of like a 90s R&B slow jam video with candles and all this stuff. It's this like Yerry Mina is the least afraid to talk about how much he loves his wife of any player I think I've ever seen. But man, I think Yerry Mina puts the effort in, and he's just so. Because on those shows, there's always, yes, the irrationally confident hot guy, but then there's also those guys that are just they're very nice and very genuine, that they always find a way to get one of those into the final few as well. So he might have a chance too. But yeah, it's hard for me. I'd have to go with Andre Gomes. I mean, my goodness.
The worst.
Who'd be the worst? Oh my goodness.
Oh, it's I was just thinking that then, and it's got to be Michael Keane.
It's got to be
Michael Keane.
He wouldn't even speak to anybody. He'd be like the one sat on his own, like.
Yeah,
I think he's married and has kids and stuff, but that's. I mean, yeah, there's nothing there for that. Yeah.
When he was in school, he was definitely the one that the lads sent over to the girls to ask, "Will you get into my mate?" Wasn't he? He was the messenger. He was the messenger, wasn't he? He got over there and he'd squeak with anticipation when he spoke.
Seamus Coleman would be useless. He'd just be irrationally kicking off on all the other lads in the house. He'd be my favourite for that reason.
Yeah, I was going to say, I could see Seamus Coleman going over to a group and advocating for someone. Yeah, that'd be interesting. Okay. It's funny that, interesting that Hannah brought up Jordan Pickford, because that's where we're going next. I'm going to ask a admittedly loaded question. And Mark, I'll start with you. Is this Jordan Pickford's last chance at Everton?
Yes, because it's his last chance at Everton, because he's probably just about on the cusp of being too good just to fester at Everton. And what I mean by that is, if he was to have another mediocre season, I think the consensus at the club would be to cash in on his remaining value. I think if he was any less valuable to the club from a financial point of view, he would probably have, let's hope not, but on the back of another poor season, he would simply fall down the ranks at the club. Whereas now, if he was to have quite a poor season, I think Everton would look to actively replace and remove him from the squad. So based on that, I would say it absolutely is. We've seen, if you want to clutch at straws, some early promise from the national side in keeping a couple of clean sheets. And what you like to think is we all hope a change in fortune, a change in personality for him. But yeah, I think that this is really make or break for him, because the interest from not only Everton but other Premier League clubs will very quickly start to dwindle if he is to replicate the last sort of half of last season.
Matt.
Yeah, I tend to agree, and it always feels like we're starting from a negative position this season in regards to fan opinion. I think that's probably the first time in his Everton career that's happened. I think in the main, going into a new season, more fans than not would have said they're happy with the goalkeeper. And like Mark said there, I think if Everton do all right this year, and he doesn't, say he has a replica season to what he had last season, Everton finished about 7th or 8th, then you go into next summer and you're looking at positions in the squad, and you're saying, Everton need a right back. Well, let's be honest, no one really cares about fullbacks that much unless they are amazing, like the likes of Leighton Baines or that sort of ilk. And it is, you're looking at the squad currently, and it's goalkeeper, isn't it? That's where you'd say is next on the list. So it absolutely is his last chance. He should be in the peak years of his career now as a goalkeeper. I'm not really one, I think, as probably all you guys know, who sort of buy into this narrative that goalkeepers are at the best in the mid-30s anymore. I think the best goalkeepers in the world are all in that age bracket now, between 25 and 30. Pickford is slap bang in the middle of that, and he's got to start performing. There's no real excuse for him. He's going to have a European Championships at the end of this campaign, so it's something for him to aim for, albeit I don't think that should be his primary motivation. He's got serious competition for the England place as well, albeit none at Everton, which is probably a bit of an issue in that sense. But I think it's one of them where it's got to be now. But I have to be honest here, I've got my doubts in regards to what he can do. I think his game is too littered with too many different errors. I mean, there are too many parts of his game that need patching up. And as a result, I think we could be sitting here, well, maybe in 9 months' time, because that's when the season's going to end, and be having very much the same conversations and having conversations about what money we can get for this lad, and who we're going to have to replace him.
Hannah.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think you only have to look from a fan's perspective as well. Every time a post goes up from like a certain journalist, there's sort of Huber rumours about, well, what about keeper next? And that's the most common thing that you see. And then even when he's been starting for England this week, people have been going Pickford on there and being surprised about that. So I think you only have to see from, in terms of in this fan base and then wider opinion on his England's career, that it is crunch time for him, definitely. He's made too many mistakes, which every single pundit highlighted, and then he do one worldly save because he had to, because he knew that he had something to prove, get off with it for a game or two, and then go back into the same routine again. And that was the thing. You could never just be a 7 out of 10 keeper for more than 3 games on the bounce. So, of course, it's make or break time, definitely. And hopefully the pressures of competition for his England place will make him step up, because, quite frankly, I'm surprised that he is still first choice at the moment. So I think it's definitely, with his age and everything, it can't not be the deciding season for him.
Yeah, Pickford is the ultimate YouTube goalkeeper for me. I mean, he makes spectacular saves that'll look great on a highlight reel. But I've been pleading for a nice, boring 7 out of 10 keeper. I just need someone who can avoid the big mistakes more than anything else. Now, having said that, and I think Mark alluded to this, there's hope that his motivations for playing for England will help raise his game, but it's a really sad commentary that's even a narrative out there that we think that might be his motivation. I think one of the bigger mistakes was giving him that huge contract extension so fast. It painted Everton into a corner where we would go into these off seasons thinking, well, there's keeper, we can't really do much about keeper. He's on huge money. We're not moving him. There's just not much we can do there. And it'll be interesting to see if before the window is over, maybe a loan situation or what have you, if Lossell is still the number 2, or if we actually bring in some decent competition for him. I think that would be really nice. Hannah, I'm going to come back to you to start this next one. And then Matt, we can pause to see if there have been any other comments or questions. Hannah, name a player other than Richarlison. And I wanted to take Richarlison off the table because he's such an easy answer, I think, on some level, which is just a credit to how much I think he's universally loved by this fan base. But name a player other than Richarlison who you have a deep affection for.
Holgate, because he's another player who stood out with all the shit around him for so long now. He's a young lad that you don't hear about off the pitch. You only hear about him in his professional aspects and how good of a sportsman he is. And you've even heard it from, I think it's Coleman, and I think actually Baines as well, when they've spoke with him, that he is captain material, and that's the type of player that they can see in him. And you see that yourself as a fan. And for me, he's just somebody who I've never had to complain about, which says a lot because I've spent most of my time this is complaining about players, and he's someone that I've never felt that I need to. He's always the player that I felt sorry for, if anything, cringing for, that they have to put up with what they do. And for me, just it's that same thing that I've said with Richarlison. He's somebody that you want to see do well because you can see how much effort and determination they put in, and he's just gorgeous, and I just love him.
I mean, look, that obviously factors into it for all of us. We are never shy on this show, even as heterosexual men or cis men, to talk about how much we are physically attracted to the handsomest of players on our team. Mason Holgate is a looker. There is no question.
Exactly.
FC Handsome is back.
Yeah, let's hope. By the way, Mason Holgate gets back as soon as possible. Yeah. It's a big blow to start the season without him. You really hope that he can replicate and really even improve on his form from last season. Mark, player that other than Richarlison, who you have a deep affection for.
Gylfi sitting now, Major. I think when you're looking for a connection between the players, you, as Hannah rightly said about Mason Holgate, you're looking for someone who has held their head high when things have really been quite dark. And certainly towards the back end of last season, he was the standout and one of the few players that you could have an enormous amount of respect for how they have performed in the current situation. Affection is probably the wrong word for the player I'm going to say, because he is someone that I have not had a great deal of affection for in the past, and I've probably been one of his biggest critics on this show primarily. But I think if you
say Tom Davis, I'm going to lose my shit.
Just say it. Don't you're not allowed on this bandwagon now.
But,
I'm not sure I should let, as the official gatekeeper.
Let him say, hey, let him speak his piece, Matt, and then you get to have your turn. All right, go ahead, Mark.
To this fan club.
Affection is absolutely not the word, but in terms of creating a connection and having a respect for a player who, I think the quickest way to gain respect for a footballer is for him to prove you wrong consistently. And as much as we haven't quite achieved the whole consistency thing quite yet, I think Dominic Calvert-Lewin has proved a lot of people wrong in their initial opinions about him. He is.
Yeah, I've always thought he was going to come good. I don't, I'm glad. Welcome to the bandwagon.
I'm getting off here.
In private conversations with Rob, we've struggled to hold out with this faux hatred of Calvert-Lewin, and the eternal affinity with which we have between myself, Rob, and a close friend now, we like to think, in Dominic Calvert-Lewin. He is someone who has managed to, on a serious note, just transform opinions about him in such a short space of time. And I don't think, he is another example of someone who we hope to see the best of in the current situation going forward this season. In a dream world of what we hope Everton to be, is he your go-to striker? Probably not. But he is someone who has shown that he is capable of making the best of what is around him. And I don't necessarily think that the situation has to be that dire anymore. He's someone who was incredibly poor at feeding off absolute scraps. And he probably did get more criticism than was warranted when Everton were at such lows. But I think if there's a potential platform there for someone to really develop into a top Premier League footballer, then he is probably the one this season. And I look forward to being proved right. Matt is fuming.
The gaslighting is just keeping me warm right now, Matt. I'd love to hear your player, but I have a feeling it's going to be more of a retort than anything else.
Yeah, in all seriousness, here, it's a nice story, isn't it? It's great to see someone who, people had major doubts about, sort of, and let's not be honest. He scored 13 Premier League goals last season. I'm not sitting here now saying this lad's the finished article and is 100% going to be our number 9 for the next 5 years and fire us into the Champions League or whatever. There are areas of his game which he still definitely needs to improve. But what I've always liked about Calvert-Lewin is that whatever situation you put him in, he tries to make the best of it. And everyone jokes about that game when he played at right wing back as Ronald Koeman, being tactically inept, and it was a mad decision. But he got the assist that day for Rudy's goal, playing in a completely unfamiliar position, putting a really good cross into the box. And I feel like that's the sort of lad he is. Between probably 2016 when he joined and the start of last season, he ultimately had to knuckle down and do a job for the team, whether that was being flogged up front on his own with no one anywhere near him by Koeman and then Sam Allardyce, whether it was under Marco Silva being this Roman focal point of the attack that had to run the channels and bring other people into the game. And by and large, that's why I always defended him, because it felt like he was doing the jobs asked by his manager really well. And that engendered a lot of goodwill and, wanting him to do well for me. And it was only really, I think, when Duncan came in last year and said, well, you're a centre forward, you stay between the width of the goalpost and you get on the end of things and score goals. And I think that was the first time he's really been tasked with being that productive goal scorer in his Everton career. And apart from after lockdown, he did it really well. And he was able to finish chances. He scored different types of goals. And that's a great story for me, because so many of those Everton players during those rough years between 2016 and 2019, young players completely fell through the cracks, and I've ultimately been lost to this wretched football club and what's gone on there. Ademola Lookman, Nikola Vlasic, Henry Onyekuru, Tom Davis is on the brink of doing that as well. Kieran Dowell, the list goes on and on and on of players who were young, who couldn't put the head above the parapet, and he's done it. And I think it's great that we're in a position here now where we can say he could be Everton's starting striker for a long time to come, and that in itself is a great step forward for the lad. And I think personality as well. He's obviously not afraid to show what he's all about in regards to his dress sense and stuff like that. He does great things off the club. I think he's got a lot of younger fans who he's got a great affinity with and a great kinship with. I think there's a young girl I've seen him do a few videos with the club with. There's a young lad who he helped last year in regards to cooking a cake and stuff like that. But those things are great to see. There's the lad who ran on the pitch after that we beat Chelsea, wasn't the 3-1 last season, who he gave his shirt to, and then he scampered off. I think he just seems like a nice fella who's got his head down and is now getting the rewards. And that's why, like you said, apart from Richarlison, you look at him and think, yeah, I want you to do well. You'll do for me. And I think that'll stand him in good stead, I think, going forward, if he has a tough start to the campaign and maybe he doesn't get the goals, because not only do we all know that he can do it, and he showed that he could do it last season, but he's the right type of character as well, and the sort of lad you want around the football club.
Yeah, I mean, look, I, in all honesty, to be serious, of course, I've never really had questions about his character, his work ethic. It was always a question of his ability, and he finally, all that work and endeavor, because he's clearly a self-made football player. I mean, he really is. He has overcome so much and overcome, frankly, the incompetence around him at times, especially in the managerial structure. I think he's been fantastic. And so, yeah, I'm glad to see this. I hope he can bounce back. I didn't have a great post-lockdown or project restart or whatever, but I think he'll be fine. I think he's one of the players that should obviously benefit from all the additional hopefully chances that are created around him. Matt, do we have any feedback we want to get to before we finish off with the last couple of questions?
Yeah, I'll read a couple of them out now. Juan has said, "Hi all, I'm a new Everton fan. I'm supposed to hate Liverpool Football Club now then?"
Yep.
Yes.
100%.
Yes.
Yeah,
Even
100%.
for an Everton fan.
To which I replied as the blue room on there saying, yes, Juan, to which he replied saying, fuck them then, that was easy.
Man,
Yay!
I love Juan already.
He's one of us.
Absolutely. Our job for the day is done in that sense. Bob has said, to be fair to Dominic Calvert-Lewin, probably only had about 30 chances last season. I have some hope with our new midfield. Bradley has said, Dominic Calvert-Lewin for me, he just never gives up, tries so hard, really wants it to work. Jobinho said, I remember Koeman made some reference to, Jobinho said, my main issue with Pickford is the lack of professionalism, videos of him drinking, getting into fights, etc. It's just regrettable. I remember Koeman saying some reference to his diet not being perfect as well. So with that in mind, him on Love Island would be...
That's what I was just thinking, so I was right.
a disaster. Yeah, he'd come back and 2 stone heavier, wouldn't he?
I can't believe you've taken the Stoke City assist away from Davy Klassen's ghost run, by the way.
Wow. No. That's fair. That's fair. Klassen never got a fair shake.
What does Rob call them? Hockey assist.
Hockey assist. That's right.
Give Klassen the hockey assist for that goal.
The pass before the pass, and and by the way, I think James is also going to lead the team in that as well. Obviously, guys, you already know the player I have the most affection for is Yerry Mina. I mean, that's pretty obvious. If you've listened to the show for more than 10 minutes, you've heard me talk about how much I love him, everything he does off the pitch, and hopefully he can stay fit this season. And I think when he plays, he's really good. I know that every center half has their wobbles. No one's perfect, but one of our friends in one of our group chats, Matt, made the joke that with James here, there's a great chance Yerry Mina is going to win a golden boot just off the corners and set pieces alone. Boy, I will say, I think Keane, this is just a random aside, but I think Keane and Mina especially have a chance they really ought to up their goal output this year, given the sort of set piece options that we now have. Okay, last couple questions. These are relatively rapid fire. Mark, I'll start with you on this one. Pretty straightforward. Do we beat the Reds at all this season?
Death, taxes, and Everton getting a maximum of 2 points against Liverpool. So, yeah, the confidence levels will peak going into both of those games, but then Everton.
Yeah, it's hard to get over that. It's a hard emotional hill to climb. I understand. Hannah,
I hope at the point of going into those games, I mean, what do you want to see before the derby to make you feel that we have got a chance? And I think we're going to have to see the middle of midfield gel very, very quickly. We also need to see what Liverpool are going to be this season, but if they're going to be anywhere near the force that we unfortunately know them as now, then they are going to be a difficult task regardless of who they are playing. But I think we could very quickly get into a position where we feel very confident going into that first derby. With new players coming in, I think that the saving grace that we have longed for years and we seem to think will carry us through these games is a growing number of players at the football club who just see the Merseyside derby as a Premier League football game. And that is hopefully, with bringing players like Alan and James Rodriguez in, the idea of the increased level of professionalism and just ability on the grand scale is what you hope brings you through those big games. That said, the blue shirt tends to be a little bit of a curse going into these fixtures, but we hope that it can turn around this year.
Hannah.
Until I see it, I can't be confident. So until it happens, I'm still going to go with the fact that it'll probably be a draw. But who knows? We're optimistic this season. We're happy this season. It's a different time, so who knows? But yeah, at this moment, I'm not going to sit here and be like, yeah, we will. We're going to smash them because, it's Liverpool.
Of course. Matt?
I reckon if we get them at Goodison Park in the third round of the FA Cup, and Jurgen Klopp plays his third string team again like he did in January, then we will definitely be in brash and bold, get them back to Anfield for a replay.
Yeah, I'm pretty much with you. I mean, no one can have there's no logical argument for confidence about a result this season, but I think it's more of the idea of, do we think it could happen? And I guess, yeah, I think an FA Cup or, some sort of cup scenario is probably the best chance. But, again, I think, and he made the point, the point was made earlier about, what's Liverpool going to be like this season? Their particular style of play requires such maximum engaged effort at all times. Once you've won you've won Champions League and then you've won the league. I mean, do they have the same motivation? I think there'll be some questions about that, but City will push them for sure. But yeah, I want it so bad, but I don't dare to believe that it'll happen. Okay, final question as we wrap up, guys. Matt, I'll come to you first. This is the real basic one. Where do we finish in the league? And second part of the question, do we win a trophy this season?
8th and no.
Hannah.
I'm going to say 7th, and in an ideal world, yes, because this is what I've been saying for so long, that we need to actually concentrate on a domestic cup for once and not just cast them to the side that it's our rightful place to be in Europe. We also need to get some domestic silverware in. So 7th and a lovely little FA Cup would be gorgeous, but that is really speaking like optimistic now and like getting high off this week. So, who knows?
I could hear the collective slamming of laptops from Bogota when Matt said 8th and no. What am I doing investing in this football club? So,
well, in the comments, Ian Clark has said, "Let's be optimistic. It costs nothing." So, and he's just replied, said there, 6th in the Carabao Cup. Maybe you do need to be a bit more optimistic at this point. We haven't kicked the ball yet, so this is probably the time to be it, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, I'm totally on board with Ian because my answer was 6th and yes. And the reason I think we'll do well in cup competitions this year is because, granted, our starting 11 is very much more stronger than last season. But I think what's key to cup competitions, like we've seen with teams like Man City dominating them and Arsenal being consistently competent in them, is that you need your squad to be capable of handling so many fixtures. And as much as you take away the 4 or 5 best players in our team now, and it all gets a little bit scary again, I think you do need the depth, particularly in midfield, to carry you through, in particular, the winter period where you've got the FA Cup kicking off again, and hopefully you've got your quarter-final and your semi-final of your League Cup. I genuinely feel that there is the squad depth there, and I think there is the urgency from Ancelotti for so many of the reasons that we've already cited. He knows that there is an imminent expectation on him to provide trophies and provide success to this club. So for all of the years where, in particular, the League Cup hasn't been a priority, something that Carlo Ancelotti will focus on this year.
Mark and I actually are right in lockstep, as we always are. That's because he's my soulmate from across the sea. I'm leaning into it. I'm saying 6th and we win the League Cup. I think that I think the idea, at least, and I'm just going to go with the notion that A, the idea is the thing, and B, and when I say the idea is the thing, I mean we've hired a manager who's won every kind of trophy. We've brought in players who've won lots of trophies. I think that at a certain point that could and should pay off, especially in a season where we don't have any pesky European fixtures to trouble us. That maybe we have a little more bandwidth to really make runs in these cup competitions in a more competent, as Mark said, manner than we've done in the past. And then B, I would just say, guys, when it comes to predictions, don't be afraid to be wrong. Just go with what you can envision and what you think. I'm going with 6th and a trophy to counter the dark cloud named Matt Jones. I think, guys, we've wrapped up, I think, perfectly on time today.
Just a couple of comments.
Yeah. Let's finish up with comments and then we'll wrap up. Yeah.
So very optimistic ones. Like I said, Ian said 6th in the Carabao Cup. Bradley Mettler said 5th ahead of Spurs and Arsenal. Ronaldo, our newest Evertonian, has said 5th would be super, and the Carabao, right? We are better than Arsenal, who are so boring as well, apparently. Live-a-vid, this is obviously a comment for another video, but it said I'd take 6 instead of a trophy. I'm not sure about that.
It gets us in Europe, I guess, in theory.
Trophy above anything for me.
Yeah,
Trophy and 17th, I'll take.
I might take that bargain as well. Guys, this has been fantastic. This is exactly what I hoped it would be. A lot of laughter and fun. We've got gosh, so much on the Blue Room right now. I just listened to Matt's interview with Adam Leventhal of The Athletic. Leventhal, I can't remember. Leventhal of The Athletic, who covers Watford. Great interview about Abdullah Decore. If you get a chance, guys, listen to the other interviews with Sid Lowe and Tim Vickery on James Rodriguez and Alan, respectively. They're fantastic listens. We've got a mailbag that'll be coming up. We've had subs weekly. We've had the weekly. We're doing a lot more on YouTube. We'll be doing Blue Monday gets going again and has been getting going again on a regular basis. We're going to have our first post match in a while coming up on Sunday. I don't know who'll be on that, but I think hopefully it'll be a good conversation. And then obviously we'll have more kickabout next week. I'm sure there'll be a stats pack thrown in. There is just so much to listen to on the Blue Room. Really appreciate it, guys. It's always fun. We can do this and have interaction and feedback from you all. Thanks to all of our longtime listeners, but also welcome to all of our new listeners, especially those of you from Colombia. We're really happy to have you. But for the big thanks to Hannah, Mark, and Matt. I'm Rob. We will see you guys again next week. Take care.
Okay, nice one.
Nice.
Oh, that was fun.
That was super fun.